Hello everyone, welcome back to Age of Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In this video, we're going to talk about some of the most forgotten rules in Age of Sigmar. Now, these rules are just the simple core rules, which are it's a 4-page document. However, there's only sort of 2 pages that are the main part, and we'll be reading those today. And like I say, these are the core rules for Age of Sigmar. However, so many people forget about certain bits in these rules, myself included, that can really change the result of how a game went if you knew how it was to the letter. So, we're going to start off, and we're not going to talk about the first part, which is the first 2 pages, which is just talking about setup on the battlefield, just because a lot of this is covered in the individual battle plans that you will play. Also, won't be talking about the scenery table for to see what abilities each scenery piece will have in the game, because I have already done a video on this and you can go onto my channel to find out and have a look. So instead, we're going to start off with the hero phase. So as the armies close in, the leaders use sorceress abilities and make sacrifices to the gods or give strident commands. In your hero phase, you can use the wizards in your army to cast spells. See the rules for wizards on the last page of these rules. In addition, other units in your army may have abilities on their war scrolls that can be used in the hero phase. Generally, these can only be used in your own hero phase. However, if an ability says it can be used in every hero phase, then it can be used in your opponent's hero phase as well as your own. If both players can use abilities in a hero phase, the player whose turn it is gets to use all their abilities first. It then tells us about command abilities. So in your hero phase, your general can use 1 command ability. All generals have the Inspiring Presence command ability, and some may have more on their war scroll. Then tells us what Inspiring Presence is. So Inspiring Presence. Pick a unit from your army within 12 inches of your general. The unit that you picked does not have to take battle tests until your next hero phase. Okay, so we should all know what Inspiring Presence is by now, and we've probably all used it many times. I certainly have, and it does sound like quite a boring command ability compared to, there's some out there that, for example, the Vampire Lord and Zombie Dragon's command ability is pick one of your units. I think it's within 12 or 15 inches of him, and they get to reroll all failed hit rolls until your next hero phase. Now that sounds a lot more interesting, a lot more fun. However, Inspiring Presence does definitely have a part, and a lot of the time is a better use, because like when we have blocks of 40 skeletons on an objective, we can think, so many of those skeleton warriors can come back and they're going to be really durable. Even if they've got a bad save, it'll just be really hard for the opponent to get rid of them. However, if you don't have Inspiring Presence put on them, and the enemy manages to do 20 damage to them, manage to kill 20 skeleton warriors, which isn't that hard to do, yeah, you might be standard bravery 10. If you've got 20 in that unit, you'll be bravery 12. However, if 20 have already died, that's 8 that's running away plus d6. So we'll get into that when we talk about Battle Shock in a moment. But all I'm saying is that you might think a block of 40 skeleton warriors is never going to go anywhere on an objective. I've lost blocks of 40 skeletons and blocks of 30 grave guard as well on turn 1, just because I made big mistakes by thinking they won't get destroyed in 1 turn, and they can. So Inspiring Presence would just absolutely neuter it. So like I say, same scenario, you've got a block of 40 skeleton warriors, 20 of them being killed, they're not taking Battle Shock. So particularly if it's your turn next, you'll be able to just bring back all those skeleton warriors from your grave sites and your heroes as if they never took any damage in the first place, more than likely. Okay, so that was the hero phase. It then goes on to tell us about the movement phase. So, the ground shakes the thread of marching feet as armies vie for position. Start your movement phase by picking one of your units and moving each model in that unit until you've moved all the models you want to. You can then pick other units to move until you have moved as many of your units as you wish. No model can be moved more than once in each movement phase. So the interesting thing here, just like I said, just a quick little blurb telling us about the movement phase, but I'm sure most of you are playing like this anyway. However, you have to, when you pick a unit to move, you have to move it fully before you can elect another unit. So, for example, if you've moved the unit and you get halfway through doing it, and then you realise that actually no, you're going to block off another unit that was going to, walk past this unit you've just put down. You can't, stop halfway through moving a unit to move another unit. You have to finish moving that unit before you can move anything else. So it's definitely important to, just take a moment to think what order you want to move things in your army. Okay, then it says moving. A model can be moved in any direction to a distance in inches equal to or less than the move characteristic on its war scroll. It can be moved vertically in order to climb across scenery, but cannot be moved across other models. No part of the model may move further than the model's move characteristic. Okay, so that's just telling us about how they can actually climb up vertically. I mean, if you've got like, I don't know, let's just say a unit that moves 6 inches, let's say crypt walls for example, and you want them to climb up a very vertical wall, and logically it wouldn't make sense how they can climb up there, but if they've got enough movement they can climb up and over it. So that's important just to know that it might look a bit funny, but if they've got the movement they can do it. And then you can't move through other units as well, so unless obviously you've got a flying unit can fly over. However, if you've got, I don't know, let's say skeleton warriors in front and then you've got black knights behind them, and you get up nice and close to the enemy, and you want to move your black knights as close as you can, so like through the skeleton warriors to then hopefully charge the enemy. You wouldn't be able to do that, you'd have to move around. So again, it's just important to remember what order you want to move things, and it's all about positioning in this game. So then says enemy models. When you move a model in your movement phase, you may not move within 3 inches of any enemy models. Models from your army are friendly models, and models from the opposing army are enemy models. Okay, so we all know this, that you can't move within 3 inches of an enemy model, just because that would put you into combat, and in order to get into combat, you need to charge, or you need to be brought into combat by an enemy unit essentially. So yeah, I think we all know that. And then it says units starting the movement phase within 3 inches of an enemy unit can either remain stationary or retreat. If you choose to retreat, the unit must end its move more than 3 inches away from all enemy units. If a unit retreats, then it can't shoot or charge later that turn. So again, it's quite standard here. We all know this. If you retreat, you can't run or charge later that turn, unless obviously it specifies differently on that unit's war scroll. And like I was saying, if you start within 3 inches of the enemy, you are technically in combat. Even if you're within 3 inches of the enemy, but let's say you've got again just 2 ranks of skeleton warriors between you and the enemy, but your base is within 3 inches of the enemy model, you're still in combat. Even though it might not look like you are, you still are. So it's always important to always check those measurements. It then tells us about running. When you pick a unit to move in the movement phase, you can declare that it will run, roll a dice and add the result to the move characteristic of all models in the unit from that movement phase. A unit that runs can't shoot or charge later that turn. So again, it's just rolling, when it says roll a dice, it's rolling a d6 to see how extra this unit can move in inches. So if you've got skeleton warriors, they move 4 inches, and then if you want to run them, you just add that d6 you rolled to the movement. So for example, if you rolled you're lucky and you rolled a 6, 6 plus their 4 inch original movement, now they're moving 10 inches. Again, this is low chance of that happening, but if you do, it can really make skeleton warriors a bit faster. And again, if you run though, you can't shoot or charge. Charging can be a problem for us in Def, because we do like to get a lot of those charges in, particularly how we have a few glass cannon units in the army, particularly the high damage dealers. However, shooting, most of the time, it's not too much of a problem. You've only just got a few things like Tomb Banshees, Terrorgeist, Zombie Dragons, and then sometimes Crypt Flares. There's a few things out there that shoot in our army, but most of the time you don't have to worry about that. And then flying, if this war scroll for a model says that the model can fly, It can pass across models and scenery as if they were not there. It still may not finish the move within 3 inches of an enemy in the movement phase, and if it is already within 3 inches of the enemy, it can only retreat or remain stationary. So, again, like I've mentioned a little bit about flying, this just sort of negates the pass rules that I've just said, how you can't move through an enemy unit, and if you want to climb on top of a wall, you've got to make sure you've got the right, measurement to be able to do that. However, with flying, most of the units that can fly have got good movement anyway, and just means that you can fly, over your own units and enemy units to really, get the movement where you want to, or to get the charges where you want to. Okay, it then tells us about the shooting phase. Now, that, like I said, there are a few things that do shoot in our army, but most of the time we're not going to have to worry too much about shooting. So, shooting phase, a storm of death breaks over the battle as across foul like rain and war machines hurl their deadly payloads. In your shooting phase, you can shoot with models armed with missile weapons. Pick one of your units. You may not pick a unit that ran or retreated this turn. Each model in that unit attacks with all of their missile weapons it is armed with. See attacking. After all of the models in the unit have shot, you can choose another unit to shoot with, until all units that can shoot have done so. Okay, so like I said, we don't really have much shooting in the army. However, it's always important to know these rules in case you're up against a heavy shooting army, and I'm sure your opponent's going to be as honest as they are. However, it's always good just to double check things, just in case that they're not as right as they thought they were. So yeah, it's good for that, and it's also good for yourself, because like I say, we don't have a lot of shooting, but you do quite often see Tomb Banshees and Death Armies just to give us that little bit extra. So basically, you can't shoot all your units at the same time. You pick one unit at a time and resolve that, so you can go from there. Which, to be honest, is not bad, because it just means, I don't know, you've got 2 Tomb Banshees and you want to kill an enemy hero. You don't know if you need both of them to do it or just one. By being able to choose, one after the other, it just makes it a little bit easier. And then tell us about the charge phase. So, howling, blood cruel, and war cries, warriors hurl themselves into battle to slay with blade, hammer, and claw. Any of your units within 12 inches of an enemy in your charge phase can make a charge move. Pick a legible units and roll 2 dice. Each model in the unit can move this number in inches. You may not pick a unit that ran or retreated this turn, nor one that is within 3 inches of the enemy. So, not being able to pick one, that ran or retreated or within 3 inches of the enemy. We've covered that in the movement part, in the movement phase. So, the important thing here is that, you've got to be within 12 inches of an enemy unit to be able to charge it. Now, the reason I say this is important, because there's a lot of things out there that give you pluses to charging. For example, there's a Flesh Eater Court artifact that is like a once per game. All your Flesh Eater Court units within 6 inches of the bearer of the artifact get to plus 3 inches to their charge, and they can additionally charge an enemy unit within 15 inches rather than 12 inches, because they're getting plus 3 to their charge, so it's possible that they could charge 15 inches. Now, it's important to know the distinction between things like that and things like, let's say, the Slaves of Darkness units, because you've got the typical Slaves of Darkness units. Let's take Chaos Knights for example. Their Hornblower gives them +1 to charge, so they would at most be able to charge 13 inches. However, they cannot do so, because you have to be within 12 inches to be able to charge an enemy unit. So there'll be a lot of times, well, that's not true, there might not be a lot of times, but there will be the odd occasion where a enemy's within 13 inches of you, or they think it's 12 inches, whatever, they roll their dice, they get a double 6, and then you check the measurement and then it's 13 inches, and you go, oh, they're just out, sort of thing, and then your opponent might say, actually, my Hornblower gives me +1, so I'll be able to make that because I've got 13. And most of the time, you both agree and think, yeah, that makes sense, but actually, going back to the main rules here, you've got to be within 12 inches to be able to charge an enemy unit, unless it states otherwise in that particular ability that's given them plus to charge. So that is an important distinction there, as there's a lot of things that give you +1 to charge that you think would mean that you wouldn't have to be within 12 inches of the enemy, but you do. So it's important to know those differences. As I'm sure you know, if an enemy unit charges you, it can really, have a huge impact on the game, particularly if they do like extra damage on the charge or they do mortal wounds on charge. It's just really important to know. Okay, it then says the first model you move must finish within half an inch of an enemy model. If that's impossible, the charge has failed and no models in the charging unit can move in this phase. Once you've moved all the models in the unit, you can pick another eligible unit to make a charge until all units that can charge have done so. Okay, so you have to end within half an inch of an enemy unit to be able to charge it. So why this is important is because there's a lot of times where you feel like you've got enough distance to be able to do it, and then once you actually start measuring, I mean, like when you measure and you think, I don't know, let's say you're 9.5 inches away from the enemy, and you roll a 9 on your charge, but you're 9.5 inches away, you think, oh, I'm just out. Actually, because you only have to end within half an inch of the enemy unit, you can still make it. Another important thing is because you have to be within 12 inches of an enemy unit to be able to charge it, unless, like I said, it states differently on your abilities. Let's say you're 12.5 inches away, you roll a 12, and then you go, I only need to, end within half an inch of the enemy model in the unit to be able to make a charge. Technically, you had to be within 12 inches of the enemy unit, not within 12.5 inches, so that would still be an illegal charge. I know this sounds like I'm doing a lot of nitpicking here with all the little rules, and might not sound like the most friendliest way to play. However, it is very important, particularly if a few of you are really competitive players and like to go to tournaments. It's really important to know these rules, because I'm not saying people at tournaments will cheat or anything like that, because they certainly won't do. And most people who go to tournaments are generally really nice people and really friendly people as well. However, there are a few people that might not completely read the rules or interpretate them in how they see fit. So it's always good to be able to know the rules yourself, to be able to contradict any mistakes that they're making. And in the charge phase, this is the big one. And then, again, it says that you charge one unit at a time. You can't roll your charges and then see where you're going to go. You have to do it one unit at a time, as that elements a bit of risk. So, for example, if you've got let's say you've got a Graveguard unit and you've got a Vampire Lord, and you're both going to charge them into an enemy unit, always roll to see if you can get the Graveguard in first, and if you can move them in, or if you can't, it might make you think twice about charging that Vampire Lord in. So there's a couple of things there to play around with. And then tell us about the combat phase. So carnage engulfs the battlefield as the warring armies tear each other apart. Any units that charge or have models within 3 inches of an enemy unit can attack with its melee weapons in the combat phase. The player whose turn it is picks a unit to attack with, then the opposing player must attack with a unit, and so on until all eligible units on both sides have attacked once each. If one side completes all of its attacks first, then the other side completes all of its remaining attacks, one unit after another. No unit can be selected to attack more than once in each combat phase. An attack is split into 2 steps. First the unit piles in, and then you make attacks with the models in the unit. So step 1, when you pile in, you may move each model in that unit up to 3 inches towards the closest enemy model. This will allow the model in the unit to get closer to the enemy in order to attack them. Step 2, each model in the unit attacks with all of its melee weapons it is armed with. And then it says see attacking, so we'll see that in a moment, but just talking about the combat. So a few important things to note here is it does say a unit can't pile in and attack twice in one combat phase. However, there are certain abilities out there that will bend these rules a little bit. Like, for example, Van Hale's Dance Macabre from the Necromancer. If he puts it on a Skeleton Warrior unit or Graveguard unit, it can pile in and attack twice that turn. So there's a few things out there that can alter this, and another, like, piling is so important here, because what I see a lot of new players do, and like if you're playing against a new player, you know, you'll tell them about, you know, the mistake they've made, and, you know, you let them off, and you know, so they learn from it and all that sort of thing, and to keep the game fun. And that mistake is they will get to the combat phase or something like that, and then they will pile in with a unit, and then they'll actually decide to attack with something else. And then, but once they've piled in or started to pile in, that initiates their selecting that unit to attack. So I don't know if they've charged, you know, going back to an example, if they charge, you know, like a block of, you know, like 40 skeletons into a enemy unit, and then they've also charged a you know, White King into that enemy unit. Obviously it's better to attack with the Skeleton Warriors first, but they might pile in the White King first, and then they go, actually I want to attack the Skeleton Warriors. By then it's actually too late, so they would have to attack the White King. Obviously, like I say, with new players, you know, you let them off this and stuff, but it is an important rule to learn. And then another important thing with piling is you have to pile into the closest enemy model. However, you just have to end up closer to it than you were at the start of the, you know, combat phase. So, you know, before the piling move, essentially. So I might do a video on this later, talking about more detail, but what you want to do here is that if you've got a big block of unit, like a unit of 40 skeletons again, for another example, in most cases you're never going to want to, you know, basically go base to base with your model and their model. For example, if your Skeleton Warrior, if his base is actually touching the enemy's model base, he can't pile in any closer because he technically can't get closer to the enemy model base. However, if you always just keep it, you know, like 1 centimetre apart, he's still obviously in range to attack with his sword. However, it'll let him to pile in a bit around further, particularly if we're going up against monsters here, and we can pile the unit around the enemy's big base and get as many of those skeletons attacking as possible. However, there might be times when, let's say you're attacking with Morghast Archai, let's say you've got 2 units of, you know, 2 Morghast Archai, and they've charged each end of a, you know, let's say a unit of 20 Blood Warriors. So you've got, you know, one on the left side, one on the right side, right on the edge, and what you've done there is you want to put your bases in contact with their own bases, as you've only got 2 models in each of those units, so you're not worrying about trying to get as much in as you can because they're already in combat, and you can already swing the weapons. But what you will be doing is stopping the enemy from being able to pile in around you so easily. And as you've attacked from the flanks, like I say, you know, a unit of 20 Blood Warriors, there might be like 4 on each side of that unit that will be able to attack you back. However, the majority of them in the middle will just have to sit there because they have to pile into the closest model, but they can't split the unit in half. So you're really putting them in a tight spot. So that is an interesting way to use it, and certainly an effective way. And then it then says, what was it? Each model in the unit attacks with all its melee weapons is armed with, and then it's just the attacking. So we'll get to that in a moment. And then it goes on to the battle shock phase. Now this is a phase that can confuse some people, particularly new players. However, the only reason it seems confusing is just because it involves a little bit of maths. But once you've done it quite a few times, you may still think it's confusing, but it's actually a lot more simple than you think. And a lot of people do forget about it, so it's always good to remember it, even if it's impossible for the enemy to fail battle shock, but it's possible for you to, you know, fail battle shock, and you're hoping that the enemy won't mention battle shock, and you can try and, you know, skip a corner there. Please don't do that. Please, you know, play the game properly and fairly. So let's talk about battle shock. So even the bravest hearts may quarrel when the horrors of battle take their toll. In the battle shock phase, both players must take battle shock tests for units from their army and have bad models slain the turn. The player whose turn it is tests first. To make a battle shock test, roll a dice and add the number of models from the units that have been slain this turn. For each point by which the total exceeds the highest bravery characteristics in the unit, 1 model in that unit must flee and is removed from play. Add 1 to the bravery characteristic being used for every 10 models that are in the unit when the test is taken. You must choose which models flee from the unit you command. So essentially what happens here is if you fail a battle shock test and those models flee, they're effectively just counted as being slain. So like I say, it sounds a little bit confusing, but all it is let's say most of you, I imagine, are death players. So you've got your unit of skeleton warriors. Let's just say you've got 10 skeleton warriors in that unit at the time, and actually no, we'll start by saying you've got 5 skeleton warriors in that unit just to make things a little bit easier. Okay, so you've got 5 skeleton warriors in the unit, so your bravery 10, as it says that on your war scroll, and then let's say you lost 5 skeleton warriors, as you had a unit of 10 in total at the start. So what you'd do is you would roll a dice, you would plus the number of that dice to how many casualties you suffered. For example, let's say you lost 5 and you rolled a 6, so that would be 5 plus 6, and then that get you to 11. Now what you would do now is you would cross-reference 11 to your bravery 10, and the difference between that is 1. So that 1 would mean 1 model which you get to choose in the unit, so it doesn't have to be like your special models in the unit, is slain, or effectively runs away. So death with bravery 10 is quite hard to fail that, particularly if you have big units of skeleton warriors. Let's say you've got a unit of 30, and they have to do battle shock. As it said, for every 10 models in that unit, you add 1 to your bravery characteristics. So this is just for the battle shock phase, just to be clear, because adding 1 to your bravery characteristics is not for the whole battle in every phase. Particularly, as I'm sure things like Tomb Banshees, there are ways to damage the enemy dependent on their bravery. So anyway, for every 10 models you have in your unit, you add 1 to your bravery in the battle shock phase. So that unit of 30 skeletons you've got is bravery 13 as a +3 to it. So it makes it a lot harder for you to run away. However, if you've taken so many casualties in one turn, you will all flee. So this is why, going back to what I said, Inspiring Presence is such a good command ability, just to make sure you don't have to worry about it. Alternatively, I look forward to using my new Nagash model I've just finished, because his command ability is no one takes battle shock. Well, no friendly death units take battle shock on the whole table, and I think they get to reroll hit rolls on 1 and save rolls on 1 as well. So it's really good command ability. When you hear it like that, you think, oh well, the best thing there is reroll and hit rolls on 1 and save rolls on 1, but actually not taking battle shock, it's just huge. It's a really nice handy ability. So just covering battle shock again, essentially what it is you roll a dice for a unit, you plus the number of how many casualties that unit suffered that turn to the dice you just rolled, and the difference between that and your bravery characteristic is how many models will flee, and if they flee, they are effectively counted as slain. So they're just taken off the battlefield and they're gone, unless you can bring them back in later turns. Now we move on to the last page of the core rules, because they are really that small. Again, we have obviously missed the first couple of pages just because that's just telling you how to set up the battlefield. However, in battle plans you play, it will tell you how to do that, so that's why I've missed it out. Anyway, so let's look at attacking. So blows hammers down upon the foe, inflicting bloody wounds. When a unit attacks, you must first pick the target unit for the attacks that the model in the unit will make, then all of the attacks, and finally inflict any result damage on the target unit. The number of attacks a model can make is determined by the weapon that it is armed with. The weapon options a model has are listed in its description on its war scroll. Missile weapons can be used in the shooting phase, and melee weapons can be used in the combat phase. The number of attacks a model can make is equal to the attack's characteristics for the weapon it can use. So this is just telling you to refer to what the weapon is the model is going to be attacking to. Just refer to their war scroll, as I have all the information on there. So it says picking targets. First, you must pick the target unit for the attacks in order to attack an enemy unit. Enemy models from that unit must be in range of the attacking weapon, i.e. within the maximum distance in inches of the range listed for the weapon's attacks and visible to the attacker. If unsure, stoop down and get a close look from behind the attacking model to see if the target is visible. For the purpose of determining visibility, an attacking model can see through other models in its unit. If a model has more than one attack, you can split them between potential targets units as you wish. If a model splits its attacks between 2 or more enemy units, resolve all the attacks against one unit before moving on to the next one. Okay, so firstly, like we've mentioned before, you attack with one unit at a time, and then to be able to pick that enemy unit to attack with, your weapons have to be within range of it. So for example, skeleton warriors, give them the sword, they have a 1-inch range, so you have to make sure the base of your skeleton warriors are within 1 inch of the enemy unit. Now of course I don't mean all the skeleton warriors in that unit have to be in range, however the ones that you want to attack with have to. And an important thing to note is that if you are, this is sort of going against what I just said just before, but if you are, as piled in into an enemy unit as you can, what you want to do is lock your bases with them by putting your base touching their base. Now, by doing that, bring the second rank of skeletons touching the base of the first rank of skeletons. Now, the reason I say to do this is because your skeletons will be on 25mm bases. Now, that is just under 1 inch. So, even if your skeletons are armed with swords, the second rank will be able to attack, because even if they're behind a rank of skeleton warriors, from their unit, they will still be within 1 inch of the enemy to be able to attack with their swords. So that's always a useful thing, because you can make the difference of, particularly if it's a big unit of skeleton warriors and they're making 3 attacks each. Let's say you've got the first rank of 10 skeleton warriors attacking, and then by moving in as close as you can, you've got the second rank in attacking. That's like an extra 30 attacks you're getting in there. So all is very important to remember there. And then so on the same note, if you gave your skeleton warriors spears, you can just imagine how many will be able to attack in that unit. Okay, so it then says if a model has more than one attack. Okay, so again, this is basically, you might think skeleton warriors, as I'm using this as an example because it's probably the unit you're all most familiar with. Now you can only give spears or swords, so you're thinking, well, I can't split their attacks because it's only one weapon. However, because it says you can split attacks, not your weapons, so what that means is that if skeleton warrior is making 3 attacks, you can actually, and there's enemy units more than one within range of him, and you really want to split the attacks for some reason, you could split your 3 attacks onto the enemy units you so wish, as long as they are within range of your weapon. So that's something I didn't actually learn until recently, because I thought it had to be you had to have multiple weapons for this to really mean anything, but no, it's just having more than one attack. So that's pretty interesting there. Okay, it then says, and making attacks. Attacks can be made one at a time, or in some cases you can roll the dice for attacks together. The following attack sequence is used to make attacks one at a time. Number 1, hit roll. Roll a dice. If the roll equals or beats the attacking weapons to hit characteristic, when it scores a hit, you must make a wound roll. Then number 2, wound roll. Roll a dice. If the wound equals or beats the attacking characteristics to wound, when it causes damage, and the opposing player must make a save roll. If not, the attack fails and the attack sequence ends. Number 3, save roll. The opposing player rolls a dice, modifying the roll by the attacking weapon's rend. For example, if a weapon has a rend of -1 characteristic, then 1 is subtracted from the save roll. If the result equals or beats the save characteristic of the weapon in the target unit, the wound is saved and the attack sequence ends. If not, the attack is successful and you must determine damage on the target unit. Okay, so I'm sure you all know what to hit and to wound and then a save roll is, but this is just for particularly the players who are maybe a bit new out there and are listening up. It's just it's a good way for them to learn to talk about it like this in each detail. And also, even if you are, a bit of a veteran player, it's good to always just, go over things just to make sure you're doing everything correctly. Okay, so to hit roll, like it said, if you've got skeleton warriors again, let's say you've just got a unit of skeleton warriors and you don't have a death hero nearby, so we're just going on the standard war scroll to hit, and they've got swords, so sword is hitting on a 4, so you roll a dice and try and get a 4. So you've hit the enemy opponent. Now you're going to wound them. Can you do as much damage as you can, and then you roll a dice and wound another 4. So you try and get a 4 again, and you do. Now you don't have any rend on this attack, so the enemy save, let's say it's a standard 4-up save, does not get effective. And then the enemy rolls the save, see if that armor can block it, and it does. So unfortunately that damage will not go through. But let's say you've got a Morgos Archai, attacking, which is a big nasty skeleton monstrosity. Now they will have like 3 attacks. So you would roll 3 dice, you would hit on a 3, and then you manage to do it, then you wound on a 3, when you manage to do it with those 3 dice again, and then you've got -2 rend. So that means that the enemy unit that had a 4-up save now -2 to it. So what that means is that they have a 6-up save, because -2 to 4 is you'd think it would be a 2-up save, but because the minus just makes it worse, it makes it a 6-up save. Because the Morgos Archai, for example, their huge spear, it's got such a good armor piercing rate that almost makes their armor not stand a chance to save against this damage. So they're saving on 6s, they fail, and then the damage from your weapon is 3. So if they fail 3 of those saves, they're taking 9 damage. So it's going to go on to tell us about determining damage in a moment, but just so you understand, rend, because I remember when I first started, I found rend pretty confusing and how it worked out. But once you start playing it, the game a few times, you start using some rend to units, you really do understand how it works. So number 4, determine damage. Once all the attacks made by a unit have carried out, each successful attack inflicts a number of wounds equal to the damage characteristic of the weapon. Most weapons have a damage characteristic of 1, but some can inflict 2 or more wounds, allowing them to cause grievous injuries to even the mightiest foe, or to cleave through more than one opponent with a single blow. In order to make several attacks at once, all of the attacks must have the same to hit, to wound, rend, and damage characteristics, and must be directed at the same enemy unit. If this is the case, make all the hit rolls at the same time, then all of the wound rolls, and finally all of the save rolls. Then add up the total number of wounds caused. So, a couple things to note here, like some of you, if you're coming from 40k, damage will carry over onto other models in the unit. For example, the Morgos Archai, we go back to that, they've got a 3 damage weapon. Let's say they're attacking an enemy unit with only 1 wound each, and the enemy fails one of their saves. That will mean that 3 models in that unit will die. So yeah, there's that as well. And then it's just saying about being able to, for you to be able to do all the attacks at the same time, you have to make sure they all have the same to hit, to wound, and the same rend characteristics. Now, a lot of people do bypass this rule because it's still completely legal, but they will, if they've got a special weapon in the unit, which I don't know, same to hit and wound, but it's got like a -1 rend and it does 2 damage instead. They will just roll a different colour dice for this. Let's say they've got white dice, and then for this special attack they will have a red dice. So it's very easy to be able to tell the difference between what's a special attack and what isn't. Like your opponent obviously knows this, and then you as the person having to who's about to take this damage, shall we say, knows very clearly what dice is representing the special attack. So there are ways to bypass it, and I don't mean that in the wrong way. I just mean just to make the game a bit quicker, so you can get to those combats where you want to. Because with Age of Sigmar, I mean, you might say you go to the store and you have like 2.5 hours for like a 2,000 point game, maybe 3 hours, and you think, oh, that's loads of time. A lot of time, particularly if you like, if it's quite a friendly game, you chat to your opponent. I mean, I do it all the time. It's quite hard to finish the game in that amount of time, and pack up all your models. So the quickest you can be in your games, particularly if you're practicing for tournaments, it's a big thing. you've got like a big model army, which with Skeleton Warriors is one of our most used units, so we do. Just get used to playing as quick as you can, and having different coloured dice representing different weapons in the same unit is a good way to do this. Okay, and then it then tells us about inflicting damage. So after all the attacks have been made by a unit have been carried out, the player commanding the target unit allocates any wounds that are inflicted to models from the unit as they see fit. The models do not have to be within range or visible to the attacking unit. When inflicting damage, if you allocate a wound to a model, you must keep on allocating wounds to that model until either it is slain or no more wounds remain to be allocated. Once the number of wounds suffered by a model during the battle equals its wounds characteristic, the model is slain. Place the model to one side, it is removed from play. Some war scrolls include abilities that allow you to be healed. A healed wound no longer has any effect. You can't heal wounds on models that have been slain. So this is just telling you that you can choose the casualties in the unit where you want to. They don't have to be on the front line, which you think logically would make the most sense. Because in Age of Sigmar, not gonna lie, you can be attacked by, let's say, a giant's crashed into your Skeleton Warriors and attacking you. I think the sheer size of that monster would not necessarily just kill the first rank of skeletons. If he swung his club, he could easily hit the ones right in the back. So narrative-wise, there is truth in it there, and also being able to pick the models you want to die means that like things like your standard bearer, your champion, and your hornbearer, and if you've got a special weapon, they're always going to remain in that unit until the very end. Of course, there are a few things out there, like, to be honest, a giant, as I brought up that example, he can pick up individual models and stuff them in his bag, which will just instantly kill them. Yeah, it's a little bit funny, that one, but there are other things as well, like Star Drakes can individually pick out enemy models as well in a unit. So there are things like that to be aware of. So most of the time you always get to choose which casualties in your unit become casualties. However, there are a couple little things to bear in mind that can hinder your ability to do so. So there's that, and then it's just saying that even if you've got models that can heal wounds, like for example, Blood Knights, they can heal. They heal one wound in each of your hero phase, I believe it is now, because you can't return models for them. So the important thing there is that even if they can, you've got unit of 5 Blood Knights and one of them died, and then it's your hero phase, you can't heal a wound on the one that's dead because he's dead, he's not coming back, unfortunately, anymore for the Blood Knights. So, that's inflicting damage there. There are, of course, quite a few abilities, and there's more so since these rules were originally written, and these abilities allow you to have extra saves against damage. So, like Deathless Minions, for example, for ourselves, which allows, in the Legions of Nagash, if a death unit within 6 inches of a hero or your general suffers a wound, a mortal wound on a 6-up, it's ignored. I've talked about how good that is before, and it's something that does bend these rules a little bit again. So then gets to tell us about mortal wounds. Some attacks inflict mortal wounds. Do not make hit or wound or save rolls for a mortal wound, just allocate the wound to models from the target unit as described above. So again, it just makes it sound like it's damage you can't save against, and to be honest, I'm wrong there. It's not damage. Mortal wounds is different to a damage characteristics, and the important thing why it is different is because there are things out there like if we take Zeech for example, and it's Destiny dice, where instead of rolling a dice to be able to do something, it can just simply pick one of its Destiny dice it rolled earlier. And there's a list of things that we can use it for, and one of the things is damage. So if there's a spell, which there is, I think it's called Bolt of Zeech, that does d6 mortal wounds to the enemy unit it picked, they can't just pick a 6 from their Destiny dice and go, that's 6 mortal wounds, because mortal wounds aren't the same as damage. So I believe this has been FAQ'd as well, so there's an important distinction there. However, another thing that is an exception to just taking mortal wounds is things like, again, the Deathless Minion save that gives you a 6-up save for it if you're in range of like your heroes, or if You've got you know, Chaos Warriors, for example. I think they're called Chaos Rune Shields. Give them a 5-up save against against mortal wounds. So there are some things here that can negate them, and that is particularly good because a lot of people just try and mortal wound you to death. So if you can negate the mortal wounds, which, you know, death has a very almost passive ability to be able to do so, can be very effective. Particularly if you play against, you know, like Zeech Skyfires as well. I mean, like, I've only played against them a few times, and I've never fought against, you know, an insane amount of them. But there are a few armies out there where, like, there's probably still armies out there where there's still 27 of them in an army, and against armies like that, not gonna lie, you're probably just gonna have to make the most out of the game, because even if you know, we've got a 6-up mortal wound save, if the enemy's got 27 Skyfires, they're probably just gonna nuke you to death. So, like I say, there's some good ways to negate mortal wounds, as long as it's a sensible amount of mortal wounds you're taking. And then goes on to tell us about cover. So, if all models in a unit are within or on a terrain feature, you can add 1 to all save rolls for that unit to represent the cover they receive from the terrain. The modifier does not apply in the combat phase if a unit you are making saves for made a charge move in the same turn. So I'm sure a lot of you know that scenery pieces, as well as having extra effects from the like scenery table I've talked about before, they do also provide cover. And the most common time you see this is with you know, not Sylvaneth Wildwoods, but with, you know, the Sylvaneth Wildwood kit, which is just like the forest kit. That's used a lot on tables, and it has a big wide base, so you can get a lot of models in it to try and get some cover. That's where you often most see this. And the important thing here is that if you've made a charge roll, don't think you're going to get that cover save, because, you know, people make these mistakes a lot. I mean, I've certainly made these mistakes a lot, where let's say there's an enemy hero in that cover, and I think, oh, I can take him with my Vampire Lord. So I charge my Vampire Lord in. My Vampire Lord, you know, is unfortunate with his attacks, does not kill the enemy hero, but I think, well, at least I'm getting +1 to my save, so I've got a 3-up save. And then you remember, oh no, because I've charged, I don't get +1, so I'm just getting my standard save. So, and then you've put yourself at a disadvantage against that enemy. Okay, so that's cover, and then we'll go on to the next bit, which is wizards. So the realms are saturated with magic, a seething source of power for those with the wit to wield it. Some models are noted as being wizards on their war scroll. You can use a wizard to cast spells in your hero phase, and can also use them to unbind spells in your opponent's hero phase. The number of spells a wizard can attempt to cast or unbind each turn is detailed on its war scroll. So it says, casting spells. All wizards can use the spell described below, as well as any spells listed on their war scroll. A wizard can only attempt to cast each spell once per turn. So, to cast a spell, roll 2 dice. If the total is equal to or greater than the casting value of the spell is successfully cast. If a spell is cast, the opposing player can choose any one of their wizards that is within 18 inches of the caster, and that can see them, and attempt to unbind the spell before its effects are applied. To unbind a spell, roll 2 dice. If the roll beats the roll used to cast the spell, then the spell effects are negated. Only one attempt can be made to unbind a spell. So, just tells you how magic works. Particularly if you're new, you might think, oh, magic's a bit confusing. And, you know, with a Death Army, magic is huge now, so it's important to learn how it works. It's simple. You have to just get the casting value, or higher than the casting value, for that spell on its war scroll. So, for example, if its casting value is a 5, you roll 2 dice, and just need to get a 5 or more to cast it. Now, let's say you manage to do this and you roll a 7. The enemy can try and unbind it if they have a wizard within 18 inches, and like it says, if it can see them. They do this by, very similar to casting a spell, they roll 2 dice, but instead of trying to beat the, you know, the casting value for the spell, they try and beat what you rolled to cast it. So like I say, if you rolled a 7, and then they roll their 2 dice, and they get an 8, unfortunately, they have unbinded your spell, and your spell does not take place, and is negated. There are a few things here that in the game that can give you pluses to casting. There's you know, like arcane scenery. There is certain characters and units, like for example, you know, Arcan the Black, the Mortarch Sacrament, will get +2 to his casting, and Nagash, our Undying God himself, will get +3. So there are ways to do this as well, and these are And for those two characters as well, just quickly mention the Arcan and Nagash. Their pluses they get into cast enders also work for unbinding as well. So it's a nice ways to modify it there. And you have to be able to see the enemy wizard. Now, you might, think that, yeah, that makes sense, whatever. But there's a lot of times where you go, oh, I've got a wizard in range to unbind that enemy spell. And you check and you say, yeah, it's 18 inches, and you roll, and sometimes, you unbind the spell and the game carries on. However, there might have been a bit of scenery that was blocking the way, and because you forgot about that bit of the rule where you have to actually be able to, for the enemy wizard to be visible to you, technically you shouldn't be able to make that unbind, and by you stopping his spell, yeah, it's helped you out, but it's changed the result of the game unfairly. So it's always important, like I say, to just be on top of that rule anyway, to make sure you're playing it right. It then goes on to tell us about the two spells you get, well, I don't know say you get, I mean every wizard gets in any army. So the first one is Arcane Bolt. Arcane Bolt has a casting value of 5. If successfully cast, pick an enemy unit within 18 inches of the caster, which is visible to them. The unit you pick suffers D3 mortal wounds. So quite a simple one, a low casting value of 5. Yeah, it's only D3 mortal wounds, however it can be very useful as, for example, I play a lot of Stormcast armies and they have a lot of 2-up saves re-rolling 1s, and there's a particular character, what my friend has, his name is Victor. He is a Lord Celestin on a Dracov, and a lot of the time he's got a 2-up save re-rolling 1, and then if he re-rolls the 1, enemy units within 3 inches of him suffer 1 mortal wound. So if you don't have any rend in your army, or much mortal wounds, it can be really hard to try and kill him. So what I do is I, take several turns, but just keep on chucking Arcane Bolt on him every turn, and he'll keep on taking D3 mortal wounds. And this guy, most of the times, in a lot of games, he never dies. However, you keep on chucking D3 mortal wounds at him, and you get quite a few, lucky rolls in the D3 there. He's only got 7 wounds, so he will die pretty quickly. And that particular character, the Lord Celestin on Dracov, his command ability makes Stormcast units within 23 inches of him not have to worry about Battle Shock. And so we've talked about how important Battle Shock is. That's a really good command ability, and the opponent will rely on it. And because your opponent thinks, he's got a 2-up save, rerolling 1s, he's super good, they won't necessarily plan for him to die. So being able to take him out with your Arcane Bolts is a particular good way to do it. And that's just an example there. There's many other ones out there. And then it goes to tell us about Mystic Shield, and this is one of the most common spells used in the game. So Mystic Shield has a casting value of 6. If successfully cast, pick at a caster or a friendly unit within 18 inches of the caster, and which is visible to them. You can add 1 to all save rolls for that unit you picked until the start of your next hero phase. Okay, so where that is important there is, well, I say where it's important there. This is a very common spell. It's always used in pretty much any army that does magic, because being able to +1 to your save is huge, particularly if you just want to keep a character, making sure he lives a lot longer, even if he's like on the backfield, just to protect himself against enemy shooting, or if you're going to charge in a very aggressive unit into the enemy that doesn't have a very good save, you can get +1 to their save just to hopefully, if they're a bit unlucky in combat, that they can, hopefully be able to save against the damage what the enemy's going to do back to you in return. Alternatively, if you've got an army with generally good saves anyway, like Stormcast for an example, or you've got a 3-up save, I put in a Mystic Shield and you've got a 2-up save, so you just made your really good save even better. So Mystic Shield has a lot of uses there, and that's why it's one of the most common spells you will see. And then it says the most important rule in a game as detailed and as wide-ranging as Warhammer Age of Sigmar, there will be many times when you are not sure exactly how to resolve a situation that has come up during play. When this happens, have a quick chat with your opponent and apply the solution that makes the most sense to you both, or seems the most fun. If no single solution presents itself, both of you should roll a dice, and whoever rolls highest gets to choose what happens when you get on with the fighting. Okay, so this rule here, absolutely rubbish. You want to ignore it. If you're playing at a tournament and you and your opponent disagree on a situation, get a tournament organizer over there to have a look and get them to sort it out. Hopefully it will go in your favour. Remember, at tournaments you're there to win games, not make friends, and it's all about winning. Obviously completely joking there, but so yeah, this is the most important rule, as Age of Sigmar is all about fun. And you know, we do this hobby to have as much fun and enjoyment. I mean, when I got into Warhammer, which was about 2.5 years ago now, I never got into Age of Sigmar to, well, Warhammer in general, to go, you know what, I could be really good here and I could win loads of games. That never crossed my mind. It was just awesome models and I wanted to collect them. So even now that I go to a lot of tournaments and stuff, I can still 100% look back and say, this isn't the reason why I got into Age of Sigmar. I do really enjoy the competitive play, but it all comes down to the hobby side. And that's where, you know, how important fun is in the game, because you don't want to, you know, just one side wipe out your opponent's army, particularly if it's a friendly game. You always want to, you know, make sure fun's an important element there. So those are the main rules. So like I say, I wanted to cover these just to make sure, just to remind everyone really just the importance of these rules. And a lot of people do forget about them. I mean, to be honest, the first year of me playing Age of Sigmar, I read parts of these rules. I hadn't even read all of them, just because, you know, different people told me how the game played and I just took their word. And then once I read through these, like, oh, actually, no, this is not wrong to what the other person told me, but it actually said, you know, it actually says it in a different way, and that could actually change some of the games you had. And it's just really important just to learn all the little details. And like I say, it's not long. I mean, I highly recommend you guys to read it as well. As you know, watching this video is good. However, reading it for yourself is always best, I find. So like I say, this is the video. To be honest, when I first made this video, I wasn't exactly aiming it for new players, but you know, it has sort of worked out that way. But hopefully for you know, some of your veterans out there, some of you people who are like, you know, medium players, you know, who have played a fair few games, have learned some stuff from here as well. And just things like you know, charges, for example. Like, I'm sure when you guys were charging units in, you did one charge at a time. But some of you, you know, might have thought, well, I can, you know, roll my charge dice and see what I need to do, and you know how far things have gone. However, you can only charge one unit at a time, so it's important for you to know this, and particularly if you're in a tournament and your opponent knows this, and then you go, right, I'm going to charge, and you roll your dice, and your opponent goes, what are you doing? And you honestly didn't know, and then you made a mistake, and it's like your opponent, you know, forces you to move one unit at a time, as you know, which is absolutely fair enough. That could absolutely change your game plan. So, you know, you weren't doing anything wrong, but well, you didn't think you were doing anything wrong. But now your whole strategy for that game has changed. So it's completely important to understand these rules as important as you can, particularly, like I say, if you're doing competitive games, or you're going to tournaments, or even friendly games. It's important to know the core rules, because everyone's so used to the General's Handbook and the rules in there, and some people haven't even read all the rules in there. They just sort of know the rules are one and then the points values. It's important to know all those rules as well. I might do a video of that at some point in the future. So from these core rules, of course, we have had things like the General's Handbook. We've had an unbelievable amount of FAQs, and there has been a recent FAQ on the core rules, so it'll be important to have a look at that. And there are, you know, like I said, the General's Handbook, so things like the rules of one, so, you know, like you can only cast, you know, originally in these rules it says, you know, a wizard can only cast the same spell once. Now your whole army can only cast the same spell once in your hero phase. So, yeah, there are definitely some changes here. From, you know, there's definitely some changes in Age of Sigmar since these first rules came out, but the game was founded on these rules, and also lives very much on these rules, with a few tweaks from FAQs and General's Handbooks. So like I say, I hope you found this video a bit educational. I just wanted to get out there. I mean, it's a little bit similar to the scenery table video I did, and it's not exactly aimed at death. I tried to chuck in as many death references as I could into it, but I just thought it was important in case you know, some of you guys are a bit new, or just as, like I say, just a bit of a reminder. So like I say, I hope you've, you know, enjoyed this video and found it a bit educational on this. So please like, subscribe and comment down below, and if you want to leave me a comment to tell me a few ideas you'd like me to talk about Warhammer, any you know, videos you would like me to cover about certain bits of the game you don't understand, or you'd like me to dive into, I would certainly look into that. So yeah, until next time, I thank you very much for watching, and remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.